Hi everyone, welcome back to our Facebook Live this week on decluttering and organisation, and I'm delighted to be joined by Deirdre Sullivan, who is the declutter doctor. Hey Dee.
Hey Fiona, how's it going?
Good, thank you. So Dee,
Good.
before I guess as we start, we should tell you and I used to know each other in a former very life to our life.
Yeah, yeah, we did.
But
Uh,
we worked in, we call it financial services.
yeah, yeah. It is a lifetime ago, really, but yeah.
And this is then, did we know that now we'd be sitting here talking about and doing what we're doing now? I think if people knew, they'd wonder what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Although lunchtime scheming has obviously paid off.
They did in their own weird way. And
Yeah.
you have very cleverly utilized what you used to do then, because you were like generally a risk background. You were working on the risk side of things where we were, and now as part of that, you've really combined what you used to learn then or apply then or try and make us apply then.
Yeah, yeah.
And
To varying levels of success, but
yeah, sometimes when you see Deirdre coming along, you'd be like, "Oh crap, my desk is untidy." Well, I throw stuff away. But
yeah.
you actually like fully went and you trained in decluttering.
Yeah, it's about 3 years ago, so it was probably, kind of in parallel almost with the records management that I was doing when we were working together. But I kind of became convinced of the need for, and the benefits of decluttering in the home and the office environment. It's such a different thing to walk into a clear space as it is to walk into a cluttered and an unwelcoming space. And I suppose in the corporate environment, there isn't as much scope to explore that. And so I started to train as a declutter therapist, I suppose, or declutterer and organizer. So it's about 3 years, and I've been doing it on and off with a small gap for children. But I suppose it's always something I'm interested in, and I've been doing. I kind of specialize, I suppose, in home and wardrobe, and to a degree, office still, but or really home office and paperwork and things. Um, the type of people maybe who come to me might be someone who just wants to hit the reset button, is a bit overwhelmed. Um, it just, it's a bit like a coach. They just want to start fresh and they just want to, do all the right things from the start. So, or someone maybe who's going through a life change, like a new baby or partner moving in or out, and suddenly they have to repurpose a space that they, you know, because they're so close to it, are finding it hard to visualize in a different way. So that's sort of the types of people, but I can kind of cater to a lot. Really, it's just a helping hand to look at your item, all your stuff. Is it serving you and helping you let go? It's just that sort of objective, gentle voice helping you to get there. That's really the purpose of it. It's not difficult, but it's just you know. Uh, it's just something that I've been drawn to, and also the organizing piece is important too. I find that once you've done the hard work of decluttering, you want to make sure it stays that way, and just putting in place systems so that it doesn't get disorganized or cluttered again. And sometimes when we've lived in a certain way for a certain time, it just helps to have that help along the road and that structure to kind of to get going again. It's not that I don't tend to see people again, because once they've done it, they've done it.
Yeah.
So that's the aim, and that's what I try to do, and for the most part, I'm successful, or I like to think so anyway.
You work both, like you, as you mentioned, go into people's homes and you help them on a one-to-one level as they need, or their families, but you also like give talks to like larger, companies or to local organizations. Like you kind of cover the two sides of things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, um, you know, people like to hear a little, maybe they're not ready to make that full on jump. And sometimes it's just a case of giving a few tips for people who just need a gentle push. And sometimes people maybe like to hear from you and to see you, and maybe they would follow up with a call after that to go on further. It depends. But, there are some very general tips that maybe if I can help someone and present it in a different light to maybe there's Maria Kondo and there's all sorts of things, but sometimes seeing someone in front of you to saying some very, like I said, there's nothing very difficult, but it's just very common sense, and it's just something that I like to try and put in a way that maybe resonates with people. That's all.
So we maybe start going through some of those tips in a general
Sure.
approach. Great. And I guess when we were talking about this earlier in the week, and like you were mentioning some of the tips to me that you have and the things that might make sense, one of the things that was really apparent is that it starts off with like maybe there might be new babies, you mentioned, or new life event, and then you get organized for that. But it's then to figure out how to carry on the organization through, if you have young children, if you have families, as the families grow. So like it's kind of a general spectrum of tips from starting small and how to continue on that organization side of things once you're in a good frame of mind and ready to go.
Yeah, like I do say that, like I said, we declutter and then you organize. And but the thing is that, your life evolves and moves on. So you do have to revisit these things. Something that worked for you may not work for you as you roll on. You do have to revisit these things when kids get bigger. Their needs are different than when they were younger. So you do have to revisit. Like there are some general principles, I suppose, that I think we'll probably get to, but you know, um, we'll say if you take decluttering in the context maybe of a child's room, like a playroom even, you know, around about now we'll say is a great time to start thinking about maybe toys that aren't working. They're broken, things like that. Maybe you can think, well, are we going to fix it, or maybe it's time to take it out? Are there toys that aren't being used because there's batteries missing? And is there scope for maybe things that have been outgrown, um, so that you can make space for Christmas, really.
Yeah.
um, so so decluttering is always relevant, even with kids and even, throughout their whole life stage. And then organizing those general tips, you can just keep reapplying the same principles every time like if you want to go through the playroom, maybe just having things, the toys that they like to play with the most, in prime storage locations, things that are easily accessible. Like you really want to be setting children up for success. You don't want things hard for them to do. So things like boxes that they can easily take out. Maybe use lids sparingly. Some older kids might love it because they want to keep things separate, but younger kids really, it's those toys are effectively dead to them. Like for instance, I use this box here for Sir. This is my son's. Now it came with a lid, and these are the ones I can send you a link later. I even have a label on it, but it actually came with a lid. But he uses it like this, so it's just so he can pull it out and things like that. And then it's just a case then of updating that system every so often.
Okay.
So I suppose the original question was around addressing it and things evolving. Even the same room used in the same way, you do have to revisit these things every so often. Yeah.
Okay. And say then, Dee, if somebody has a new arrival on the way, or they're planning for bringing baby home or getting ready, what are some of the things that they should start to think about from that perspective? Is there a lot of changes they need to make, or keep it simple, or some basic
Yeah.
figure out?
Well, I'm not a baby expert, but I have one, but um, that doesn't make me an expert. But and like you had Fiona, was it from last week?
Yeah.
And she spoke about the sleep environment. So I think with new parents, there's probably like they feel like they need to cover everything and buy everything. But in terms of being organized. And they may be looking at a space like a spare room and they need to convert, and they're like, where do we start?
Yeah.
So obviously they have the decluttering of their own stuff. So that's a separate adult issue. But
Yeah.
when you're looking at a space, you need to think about, firstly, the sleeping environment. And that's the first thing you need to figure out. So I won't go over the ground you did last week, and I wouldn't know anyway, to be honest. So you just think about the sleep environment for a start. But in terms of organizing, the first thing I would say, and it's a lot of your followers are probably have kids already, so they're probably well familiar with this. But for new moms and dads, you're kind of thinking, okay, well, like, what do they need? Do they need nappies and wipes? And you just feel like, they need muslin cloths and they need bibs. And I like the idea, and I like to implement it in, and I recommend it to people I deal with, is to have one command center, is what I would kind of call it. It's
Okay.
basically a changing table, the changing table, but everything is filled from there. So all of the nappies go there. So if you were filling your changing bag, or if you have a separate area, maybe in a bedroom, it all comes from there. So you're not kind of trying to refill and not sure what's in one, and trying to buy for one. It's that central place is where all the stuff goes. So it also means that when you're when you're when you've washed the muslin cloths, they all go back in one place. It's a very
Okay.
simple thing, but actually having that one area really is a great way of knowing, okay, what do I have left? What do I need to refill? And as the child gets older, you'll find that it just gets less and less and less. I have it's a changing table I use, but like if you have drawers, chest of drawers would do
Yeah.
the same thing, just where, it's just a central point that gathers everything. The major thing I think is around clothes and
Okay.
wardrobe. Um, just if we touch again on the babies again, maybe for
Yeah.
some of your followers, it mightn't be as big an issue, but I think the principle is the same as you get older, basically. And I found this myself when I was pregnant and getting ready for the hospital, and you're like, okay, do I need up to 1 month clothes, up to 3 months, up to six, it just seemed like you needed a lot, and you needed vests and you needed baby grows. And I hit upon the idea, and I've used it since, and even as he's gotten older, I keep on using it, and I recommend it to people, and I found that all of a sudden people's presses and wardrobes suddenly become much more easy to follow, let's say.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll say for small babies, what I would have used would be something like this. Now that's sorry, the light's kind of getting it there. That's the IKEA scuba boxes,
Okay.
because they're small and they're collapsible, so you can move them around and change them. So they just fold down when you're not using them. Um,
Use those for clothes, see, or for
yeah, I know they look small, but for
yeah.
small babies, that's fine. But actually, they come in sets of six,
Okay.
so they actually come. Like there's a longer version that's actually sentence closed there, and then there's a bigger one, which say you'd use for baby grows like that. So
Okay.
that's actually, and so what's nice about that is that they're movable. Let's say you're using a chest of drawers and they're movable within, and as you're evolving, you can switch things around. So what I would say is, so when you're getting organized for a baby like that, you would set out your boxes and then allocate each. So you might have vests and baby grows and so on. The thing about babies and children is they're sort of magnets, especially when they're small, for clothes and gifts. So you're
Okay.
getting presents of clothes, but you're also getting donations, like a
Yeah.
sister who's getting rid of clothes. And it's happened to me more than once where I've been in someone's house and they're getting ready for a baby, like baby number two. They pull out these beautiful clothes that are still in the hanger that they never got to on baby one,
Yeah.
because they fell by the wayside. They got hung up, and no one thought to look, or they realized when baby was 9 months, but these are 6 month clothes, this kind of thing. So when you get a gift or a donation and you're going to use them, they're to your taste, let's say, I would straight away take them out of the hanger or whatever, fold them up and put them into the correct category, and that way you can see what you have coming down the tracks. You can also see if you don't, like, let's say it's coming into the winter and you don't have enough winter jumpers. With a new baby, that's just not going to happen. You just have so many clothes. You can address that. Whereas, as you get older and you kind of get less of the gifts, again, it's a great way for moms, like everyone I know. You use the mother care sale and the next sale, and you buy for the year in advance,
Yeah.
and you really don't want to be, you want to know that you're going to put those in the right area. So basically, I, I would use a box like that, or any box, as long as they fit into your drawer, and just, you've bought the thing in mother care, put it in the right box, forget about it until you until you need it. Um, so it's the same principle. Like I would use that, and I use that for him, but it works so well. Are you okay?
Yeah.
And also, sorry, in wardrobes as well. If you rely on wardrobes rather than drawers, you can still get wardrobe dividers. They're printable from the internet. They're free.
Perfect. So do you do that right at the beginning? You get your storage boxes and you're ready for the months ahead straight away.
Yeah, well, yeah, look, um, like the world doesn't, when you bring a baby home, let's say, you can still go to the shops, but it just feels great being organized beforehand.
Yeah.
But if you have older children, same principle applies. You can just organize, like if you divide your drawers in particular up, all of a sudden things don't get as muddled,
Okay.
especially if you don't feel quite as chaotic when you open up the drawer and things. So I would just recommend it in general, or even for adults, it's very useful.
Yeah.
Just to be able to categorize your clothes, the same principle I would say for most things, categorize your stuff in drawers. And then you're much better able to see where you're going. The other thing with clothes is, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, and then as they grow out of clothes, what would you do? Or say you need to put them away until next winter. Is there any recommendations for how to approach that?
Yeah, well, when as they grow out of clothes, or you have to let go of the clothes at some point. What I would recommend is having a bag, or a bag or a box, and put it somewhere separate, even if it's in the child's own wardrobe or if it's in the hot press or something. So as you know when you're
Yeah.
pushing it. So put that item through the wash one more time and put it into that box, and you don't need to touch it until that box gets overflowing.
Okay.
Um, and then just think about, so I'm a big fan of decluttering, but there are things, especially when it comes to your babies, that you might want to keep, but be very strict on yourself. You
Okay.
might want to keep for sentimental reasons, or you might want to keep because you'll have other children
Yeah.
coming along, and these are really special to you, and you want to keep. But just be strict. I mean, not every baby girl is relevant, not every jumper.
Okay.
Um, then what you're looking at is things that maybe you don't mind, maybe lending to a friend, or even if you're done with them altogether, that you're going to donate. Um, just be careful. I think we tend to then just throw everything else at someone. Just be careful that they're in good quality, there are no stains, that actually, maybe you've worn them to death, really, or washed them to death. Like if you were to give that to, or if you were to receive it, just think about, well, would you be happy to put that on another child? You know what the history is,
Yeah.
but they don't.
Very, very fine.
And then for those items that maybe they were stained and stuff, it's just something, especially with when you're talking about throwaway fashion and
Yeah.
sustainability, you can actually just put them in a separate bag, and your charity shop will take them
Okay.
for recycling. Like, just mark them not for resale, and they can take them.
Oh, you can actually donate to your local craft shop for recycle.
Yeah, they take them all
Wow.
the time.
Okay.
Yeah. I think some they can use, they can actually sell them for recycling, or I think some people buy them for like rags and stuff like that.
Oh, that is, I never knew that. That's amazing.
Yeah. No, it's really a helpful thing to do,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Okay, so we got a couple of questions in, and if anybody who's watching either now or afterwards has a question, if you're watching now, I'll see it here in the comments and I'll read it out, and we will answer and give us her words of wisdom. Or if you're watching back later, just leave us a question in the comments, and
Absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
that was it, and we'll answer it. But the first one that we got in, Dee, was around recommendations for storage for children's books.
Yeah, now I will. It's a good question, actually, and it's a really nice thing to be able to have visually there.
Yeah,
Um, what I will do is I will put up a couple of images maybe on my stories, and you can share them as well. But
yeah,
basically, there are some lovely uh, actually canvas bookshelves, so they can easily be put into like a child's room and then taken out, I suppose,
yeah.
if they're redundant, or and they're very movable, and that means the child can really access them really easily. One thing that I like to do, actually, is a shelf. There's some lovely ones. I think we have one that's for Jojo, Mom, and Baby. I'm going to pronounce that wrong. I always feel a bit paranoid when I say something.
I would have all believed you.
Yeah, there's some lovely ones. It depends on what kind of space you have. But one really simple, fabulous solution is the spice racks. There's a spice rack in IKEA actually do a really good one. I actually think in their showrooms in Dublin they have examples of using that as a bookshelf.
Yeah.
And they're like cheap as chips. But actually SoStream Green
Yeah.
have a beautiful bookshelf as well. Sorry, spice rack as well.
Okay.
And it's actually an untreated wood, so if you wanted to paint it, you could. And honestly, they're probably only about €7 or something. And then you could get a couple of them. And this is just, those really favorite books maybe in the bedroom
Yeah.
that you want to keep separate, and you can change them out as they grow older. And again, it's just something, it's nice they can grab, or maybe have a cubby hole or something that
Yeah.
you just want a couple of the best ones. So there are a couple of solutions, but I'll show a few pictures as well
Perfect.
on the stories maybe.
As well, and share them later as well for people to see. And then we got another question in for recommendations for children's toy storage.
Yeah, now
We kind of said earlier, I guess, with the not putting the lids on the boxes that they can
eat them. Like I think there's a couple of general principles now. Like for instance, I think I think when it comes to organizing, people's default is to buy a product. Sometimes. And like I said, you do have to be clear that what you're organizing is the right stuff. So let's assume that's been done. But you need to look at the space then that you have, because, because visually sometimes if things aren't coherent, it doesn't feel organized, even though functionally it probably is. So I think you do need to be careful of your space, and you need to be careful that you're getting the right kind of product. So with all those caveats aside, there is, like, one example is actually the Trofas in IKEA, which is basically it's basically a row of boxes stacked within one unit. But if that doesn't suit you, so that wouldn't suit me. We have quite a small house, I'll be honest. And our playroom is essentially the living room. So I need to be able to put stuff away. So mine are very functional and not so pretty, but they do the job. So I showed you a box earlier, but I have another big one like that, same idea. So like that's for like cars and trucks and things like that that are that bit bigger. So sorry, my battery went there, or not gone, but
so because that's easier, the children can go in and pull it themselves.
Sorry, yeah. I'm just going to put that in just in case it goes. It probably won't. But I suppose the principle really that you're talking about would be just to categorize things and be able to put them into separate boxes. So if that's in a unit like the Trofast, or if it's boxes in a press and it works, go for it. I would say that if it's something that is more visual, that it's going to be on display, try and keep it consistent and unified. Again, there's sort of a mental thing in seeing something tidy. You kind of appreciate it being tidy if it looks well. But if it's just going to be in a press like mine are, it can be as functional as you like. Again, make it easy and accessible, and be consistent actually in where things go. So I even find that because things have been in the same place for him, and he's 2, he often puts things back in the same place.
You're
yeah, well, sometimes. Or if you're not sure about if it's older kids, like, use labeling, or I have a label maker actually, but you can just put a sticker on it, or there's some lovely little stickers, even put an image of something on it. Just a way of triggering and maybe making it fun with that. They make sure they get it back into the right box. So I suppose I'm not big on products because it just depends on the space, but as long as like I said, it's it's accessible to them, and it's functional, it's easy to pull out, and that you do categorize, because if you throw things on everyone, you still can't find what you want, and you kind of lose interest in being organized then.
And Dee, one of the things, and we might just mention this because one of the things that we were saying earlier is you set me on the links to some products at some of those, the boxes and stores that you have, and I'll share those. But what you were saying, we were talking earlier about how everybody thinks they have to make the big trip to IKEA all the time, and but actually you were saying that a lot of kind of more nationwide shops have really improved and have really good options that people can go to and use these days.
Yeah, no, I think we use IKEA in the same way that we might use, like, we say Hoover, or it's kind of a shorthand for things, and I suppose it's a kind of a universal. People know the language essentially, but I think even in the last couple of years, a lot of other shops have raised their game. Like Woodies nearly always have a large storage section now. You can actually find fabulous things in somewhere like TK Maxx. Locally here, and actually there's about 8 of them in the country now, is Yusk. JYSK, I know it doesn't sound they have a lot of boxes as well, and they're actually, they can be quite cheap actually. They're sort of a little bit cheaper than IKEA. So there are lots of options, and you wouldn't necessarily need to make a trip to IKEA. And even for things like bookcases and stuff, where everyone had the Kallax or something was the IKEA one. I know, but like Homebase have them now, or a lot of those things. Maybe even if the ideas are stolen, they're available much more closer to home than you would think. So no, it's not that you have to be in IKEA to get organized. You can do that with what's around you, and you can even use stuff that you already have. And I would even encourage that. I do think that people tend to organize first, and then sort of it because they've kind of organized ad hoc. You end up with way more storage than you need, and it doesn't make any more. There's no flow to it. So I kind of even recommend using what you have.
Okay, that's good to know. Dee, thanks a million for all your time, for all the tips, all the advice. It was really helpful and really practical. And
yeah, true. But thanks for having me, Fiona. And if anyone has questions for you and you want to pass them on, by all means, happy to answer.
Absolutely, and I'll link your Facebook and your Instagram here. And you're based in Niche, just if people for whatever reason do want to, not for whatever reason, for decluttering reasons.
Well, for any other reason either, yeah. But I am happy to travel. I could arrange that, so if anyone has a particular need and they want to discuss it, by all means, I'm available. But if they want to know how local I am based in Laois. But through the motorway, it's close to everywhere.
Yeah, you're right.
Tells me. yeah. Yeah, it's on the motorway.
See, thanks a million, and thank you everybody for watching, and for people watching back, thanks again. And we'll have another live and catch up with somebody in the next 2 weeks, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.
Cheers. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.